My name is Daddy Satan, and welcome to my new series called The Devil Wants to Know. And I'm here with...
Audrey Rugburn.
I'm so excited! Thank you so much for coming today. This is gonna be badass. Yeah. So I actually met this beautiful queen here not too long ago at a protest. You may have heard that there are, were 3 bills that were introduced that are anti-drag in the state of Arizona. Now there's 4, which is very scary. Us and a whole bunch of other people, maybe up to 500 people, protested at the Capitol. It was amazing. I couldn't have done it without people like you, so thank you so much for helping. It is very important to stand up for your community, and I'm just excited to get into this interview today. Yeah. So actually, when I was 18, I wanted to be a cop too, and I actually went to school for administration of justice. I would say when I wanted to become a police officer, honestly, I felt like I was a loser. I had no respect from anybody around me. I did not have friends that were nice to me. And I was just living a really shitty life. And I was desperate, like, how am I going to find respect? And at the same time, I am a huge believer in justice. Like, I play video games like Breath of the Wild where you are the hero. I love shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender where you save the world. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, how can I get a little piece of that? Become a cop. Right. So this way is self-fulfilling. I get to have some respect and I get to change the world. But after I got my education, I actually learned how much the system is corrupted. There are so many policies and procedures that go against just American citizens in general, and not to even mention the marginalized communities, which is super sad. But as much as I wanted to be a cop, I am super grateful that I went through that education because I may have never learned the intricacies of inequality in America and even throughout the world. And one of the biggest eye-openers was, like, the prisons in Norway, the prisons in, like, other first world countries, and how they actually treat people like human beings. So I no longer want to be a police officer, but it gave me a lot of understanding from both sides, absolutely. So I'm very excited to talk to an ex-police officer here today who is also a drag queen. How often can you say like that? Not that often.
Not that often. You know, a lot of people only see the badge, and a lot of those officers forget that there's a fun side outside of your day-to-day grind in law enforcement. And for me, this was my self-expression.
I love
this
it.
This was my way to get out and put smiles on faces, and just a way for me to get out of that day-to-day grind of wearing a badge and gun and having to play cop. Mm-hmm. And, you know, let's face it, not everyone likes them.
You know what? Is being a cop a drag in its own sense?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, totally.
You got
Are
the
you
outfit,
kidding?
you got the cuffs.
Yeah. I mean, you might as well just slap the makeup on and, you know.
And work.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, no. Being a cop is indeed a drag all in itself. Mm-hmm. It really is.
We just came into a new realization right here on The Devil Wants to Know.
Are we saying all cops are drags?
All cops are drag. Say it. All cops are drag. So can you tell us about yourself and how do you introduce yourself to new people?
Wow, that's a good one. So first and foremost, my biggest pride that I have in life is I have 2 actual kids. So always introduce myself as a dad, a very proud dad. They're growing up beautifully in a now separate household. They've always known Dad as a drag queen. I met their mom on stage.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that story?
Yeah, so I was engaged to a guy at the time, mm-hmm. and she had come into a bar in Tempe off Mill Ave, and I was performing, and it was just one of those like, oh, hey, what's up, sis? You know, blah, blah, blah. Coincidentally, she was there with her girlfriend.
Ooh!
Yeah. One thing led to another, and this beautiful queen ended up in, you know, some fun stuff.
Yes.
And then, you know, 10 years later, after a marriage, we'd realize that, hey, we're kind of lying to each other. But it was fun. And you know what? Honestly, she's my absolute best friend in the entire world.
Oh,
yeah.
That is so sweet. Yeah. Drag bringing families together.
Yeah. Oh, indeed. Yeah.
Yes. Can you tell us about how you got into the police career?
Sure. So I was a third generation police officer. I know, right? Had to follow in his family footsteps, do the right thing. Like,
Yes.
oh, gotta be the right one.
Yes.
I actually started off as a federal law enforcement officer.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Fun, right? So I started off in maritime enforcement out on the water. Did that for a few years and wanted to come back home and do local police work. So I did, came back and spent the better part of the next 12 years doing local police work, to include working inside a prison. And that's when my view on our prison system completely changed. And like you had touched about it earlier, the way the American prison system is just, it's so bad. It is so bad. There is no rehabilitation whatsoever. And the amount of money and effort that we would need to take to really focus on that is astronomical. But really the long run is the recidivism and the retention of inmates. And you look at these countries like Norway, Sweden, London, Canada even, they don't have that. They treat their inmates like real human beings, not like animals. They're not caged up. They're not told what to do, when to do, how to do. And that breaks a human down, especially when we're talking our justice system, where we've got no problem throwing someone in the slammer for 10 to 20 years. Over what? Simple stuff. And it breaks a human down. And then we wonder why they return to normal civilization and they can't function as normal human beings.
Right.
They're so used to that hard structure that it breaks them down internally.
I completely understand that. That was one of the big things that I learned about in my education was recidivism, which is if somebody offends, then when they leave the prison system and they offend again, that is recidivism. They are coming back, they're committing either the same crimes, different crimes, but pretty much the life of crime is all they kind of start to know. And the sad thing is, with the prison system, we claim that it is for reform, but I don't see any reform happening in our prison systems. And one of the things that I really liked about the Norway prison system was they said these people are our neighbors, which is so true. When you want people who are leaving the prison system to come out and they're going to be living in your communities, do you want them to be so angry, so broken down by the system, and so full of hatred that they're living right next to you, and what are they going to be doing to you? If you treat people like human beings and you teach them how to better their lives and why what they did was wrong, and teach them how to accept what they've done, how to apologize to the community, that in the long term actually makes a huge difference. And like you were saying, the amount of money that it would take to change the American prison system is astronomical. But at the same time, the amount of money that we are spending for each one prisoner to live just 1 year in the prison is astronomical itself. And I think it kind of has to do with the privatization of the prison system in America, but also our society of wanting to punish. Like, when somebody does something bad, all Americans want is punish, 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 and then that'll make us feel better. But what does the person learn out of punishment? Yes, I think depending on some crimes, they do deserve a certain level of punishment. But if that's all that they get out of it, how are they going to be a better person when they leave that prison and they come into our everyday lives? If you want your own life to be better, you have to treat others the way that you want to be treated. And if you take any deep dive into the American prison system, it is dark, it is scary, and no wonder American life is so fucking hectic, honestly.
Yeah, no kidding.
Can you tell me what you hoped to accomplish by getting into the force?
Super cheesy, but on the side of most police cars in America, what do we see? Protect and serve, right? So I took those words to heart, and I really wanted to protect and serve the community and the people in the community and give back what I could as that not authoritarian figure, but very much that peacekeeper is what I saw myself. I never saw myself as, I'm coming in here as Johnny Strongarm of the law, you know? I was the one that was like, okay, let's calm down, let's talk, let's put the, put the knife down, it's just a ham sandwich, let's not get too crazy, sis, let's talk about this. So that's what really drove me to get into law enforcement, was the whole protecting and serving aspect of being there for your community.
Yeah. Did you happen to notice if your other brothers and sisters on the force also kind of had that idea going into the force, or was it that Johnny Strongarm? What did you notice?
I unfortunately have to say most of them come in as Johnny Strongarm. And I'll never forget when I graduated the academy, my grandpa was there with my dad to pin my badge on my chest, and they both said, before we give you this badge, we have one question. And I was like, okay, you're already on this big high emotion, like you just graduated the academy, like, come on. And they asked me, does this badge make you a man, or were you a man before we give you this badge? And I was like, wow, that's really deep and pointed, like, how do you want me to answer that right now? And it took me years to understand afterward that for some people, they become an adult after they get their badge. And there's a lot of officers out there. And I think that has to do a lot of what we allow for qualifications in law enforcement in America, which I hate to say are ridiculously low. It's pathetic the minimal education that you have to have and life experience to become a police officer in America. High school diploma, GED, 26 weeks of an academy, boom, you're a cop out on the streets with a badge and gun, potentially taking somebody's life with only 6 months of training and a high school diploma. You look at London, other big first world countries, minimum bachelor's degree, minimum 2 years of the academy. A lot of that is learning to talk to people and how to de-escalate situations without lethal force. Look at London, or most of the UK, those officers don't carry guns. It's all about how they talk to people.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting to think about, and kind of for me, like when I wanted to get into the force, that was my moment to become an adult, so I totally see that, and it's scary. It's scary to see like those type of personalities out into the world, like you say, with a gun. That is really a scary sentiment. Right,
and we arm every police officer out here with a gun, so it is very scary to think that that's what we allow.
Yeah. America.
Yeah.
Can you tell us why you left the force?
Being openly gay and a queen, a lot of my partners knew that. Honestly, my departure started during BLM. A lot of these Johnny Strongarm brothers and sisters that I had were out there to stop the BLM protests, but in a very different way. Meanwhile, I'm over here going, hey, wait a second. You guys do realize that this is a huge problem and that they are legitimately protesting for what's right, just like we protested for the drag rights. Oh, well, it's getting out of control, all this stuff. Okay, rightfully so. Look at what's going on. And I just felt like such the odd duck out. And honestly, it started to affect the way my team looked at me and the squad looked at me, because I wasn't willing to go out there and be Johnny Strongarm of the law. I was like, hey, you know what? As long as they're not killing each other, it's property. Property can be replaced. It's a glass window. It's whatever. We don't need to go in there and start taking lives for property. It just didn't balance. And that's when I'd realized, you know what? Law enforcement has changed significantly since I first started. At that point, I think I'd been in almost 15 years, and it was very much an eye-opener for me. That was like, you know what, I need to step away from this, because it's not what I first came into, and the changes that I saw in the department, not only my department, but just the state and on a national level, it wasn't for me anymore.
Yeah, I remember with my schooling, it was at the very beginning of BLM, and it was very different because it was pre-George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the way that it was teaching us was, like, you need to protect property, but then at the same time it would say, like, we can't be us versus them, because that just creates tension, and
Right.
where is the winning on either side for that?
Exactly.
But then it would also say, we don't know how to do this. We need a new system. And they have billions of dollars, and they're not trying to find the ways to create community. So it was very strange for them to be like, your number one priority is to protect their property, but then at the same time, we need to create community, but we're not going to try to figure out how.
Right.
So it made me feel like kind of lost and scared too. If I were to continue down that path and be on the force, I feel like I would have been very conflicted constantly, like, am I supposed to pay attention more to these windows or the actual live human being that's here in front of me? And it was just very strange. And not to mention, like, how quotas come into it. I did not know about the quota system until I got into my education. And so then would I be pressured to, like, do I need to write this ticket or arrest this person to meet my daily quotas?
Mm-hmm.
And I also learned that quotas are kind of to show the politicians, like, see, we are arresting this number of people, we are citing this amount of tickets every day, so we actually do need this much funding. And it just constantly goes up and up and up, and they constantly get more and more and more money to kind of become like a militarized type of force. And the way that you're saying, like, England is, they don't even need guns.
Mm-mm.
But in America, I have seen the type of equipment that police have. It is insane. It is literally military level grade. And just to have that mentality against your neighbors and the people that you serve does not seem like anything productive could come out of it.
No.
Other than creating the us versus them
Very
type of
much.
mentality, which is, literally is not safe. Before you got into the force, what did you think being on the job would be like? And then what was it actually like when you were in it?
Oof. Wow, two completely different things. So I very much thought it was going to be that protect and serve, you know, where it's just a bunch of friendly, peaceful men and women in uniform going around and putting out small fires. What it really was a bunch of really badge-heavy young people. And I say young because even if they came in 40s or, you know, later on in life, they're still rookie officers.
Mm-hmm.
And those rookie officers that make up a majority of the force, because let's face it, not everyone sticks around for a 20-year career in law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know how to handle situations.
Yeah.
And they come in so strong and heavy. And like I said, here I was, the one that was like, no, hold on, let's pause, let's talk, let's do this. And that was very difficult because you've got your partners coming in there wanting to go. And like you said, military-grade equipment is what every officer has access to.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you're allowed to carry all that stuff does not de-escalate a situation. When they show up, guns out, ready to go, that doesn't help anything.
Right. So, with the current state of the country, you hear this phrase ACAB a lot, which stands for all cops are bad. And honestly, I kind of feel that. Not because I hate any police officer, anybody who has been or wants to be a police officer. The way I view it is the career alone itself. If you remove any human being from that position and kind of just envision an invisible man as a police officer, and with only the policies and career left, it is up. The biggest things that they want to perpetuate is that you protect property, you are punitive, you fill your quotas, and they preach a lot of wanting to build community, but I don't see them out here making community connections. I don't see them wanting to understand anybody that's different than them. What I see is people wanting to strengthen the bond they have with each other, and then the more that becomes strong, the more it seems like it's very us versus them, which literally turns deadly here in America. So to me, it is not the people, because as myself, like, I wanted to be a police officer for justice, to learn about myself, and to create respect for myself. So I can only imagine how many other people out there are wanting the same. They're just wanting to do good. They want to be good people. And I can totally identify with that. But when you take good people and put them into a position that I believe is evil, you can't not get some form of evil out of it. So can you tell me what your opinion of ACAB is and what this means to you?
I think you touched on it very well, of creating the whole us versus them mentality. And you're right. Outside of, if you take the human element out of it, and you seriously do just look at policies, procedures, quotas, what's expected of you and everything, it leaves a horrible, horrible image. Even if someone is trying to be good, even if you're trying to be that change, you're trying to be different, you do have that constant backing from supervisors and higher up. Because like you said earlier, funding depends on how many tickets you write, how many people are arrested. And we won't even get into the whole diversity aspect of it, because whole different mess. But you're right. It makes all cops essentially kind of in an evil position where it puts us versus them. And it creates that horrible tension between the two. And that really, at least in my opinion, that really needs to be broken down on an agency level and a state level, where we as the people and the government need to finally get in there and start breaking these policies that we have in law enforcement down, so that we can create the community aspect. We can get back involved with the community. Go back to the early days where cops were out there walking the streets. They would get involved with the communities. They knew people. They knew what was going on. And we didn't have this fear and tension of our law enforcement officers. Okay, so in Arizona, I have wanted to be on the citizen review committees, where if an officer, yes. I believe it's called the Brady list, if I am correct. So anyway, it would be like when an officer does something kind of heinous, there is a citizen review panel that says, like, this cop should no longer be a police officer. Like, they broke the trust between the community, they broke the trust between the force, so they should no longer be allowed to be a police officer. I have wanted to be in those so bad, not only for my administration of justice background, but for my background as a whole. Like, I have trauma, I am biracial, I am pansexual, and part of the queer community. So I think it's important to have a diverse committee be looking at our officers and what they're doing to the community against them. However, the way that Doug Ducey set it up, it is almost impossible to get on this committee. I cannot find where it is. I don't know what the requirements are. I have never found the application, and I don't know the people who are on the committee. So, also, they did pass that police officers are allowed on the committee. So if you have police officers reviewing police officers, that's really where the back the blue kind of comes in. Like, you're going to want to... Not a biased opinion.
No! Not biased!
No, not at all.
Not in my America.
No.
So, it's honestly scary. And on top of that, police officers are required to take certain amount of hours of training per year, whether it's de-escalation classes or just learning about how to better serve your community. And here in Arizona, they actually started allowing extremist groups to be the ones to teach these classes. So if you have groups that are tied to right-wing extremism, to the Proud Boys, to insurrectionists, teaching our law enforcement officers, and then on top of that, if they do something bad, you have police officers of the same mindset and the same training reviewing what they do. It's literally a circle. Like,
just a big loop.
And if anything, the loop just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And even more, the us versus them gets stronger.
Absolutely.
And like you were saying, you don't really see beat cops anymore. You don't see them out walking the beat. You see them in their cars, talking to each other, arresting people. Like, you see a lot of up stuff, but where are they? can you tell me the last time that you met a police officer in your community, or anytime anybody from the force tried to reach out and learn about who you are, what you do, what your community is like? It's just hilarious, kind of, that they tout wanting to protect and serve, but where are they? They don't know who we are. How can we be together if it really is the us and them type of factor playing in? Scary, honestly.
No, it is. It absolutely is. Because you're right. Once we took these officers away from being true beat cops and walking a real beat, and you said it best, we put them in a car, we armed them like the military, they got away from that. They don't realize that you can go park your car and go walk a beat. You can go walk your neighborhood, get to know your people, get to know your store owners, get out of QTs and gas stations, go explore, know your community. And you're right, once that mentality, and honestly the management and administration of law enforcement, once they saw that was changing and they allowed it to continue to change, it's very much separated us and them.
It's sad because without them in their uniform, what is the difference between us? Maybe
Absolutely
mentality?
nothing.
Exactly. It
Absolutely
is
nothing.
who you think you are on the inside, but at the end of the day, we're all human beings on the same rock floating through space.
And I've got to say this. So we were talking about this before. And I briefly thought about it, and I was like, you know what? It really is. Being a police officer really is a drag. You are honestly a drag performer. You put on a costume every day. You change your persona. You change your attitude. You change everything about you. Just like this, as you know,
Yes.
when this comes on, this is a completely different person.
Yes.
When this comes off, it is a completely different person.
Right.
And I think a lot of cops have gotten into that mentality that they don't understand you're still the same person. Just because a badge and gun go on in a uniform doesn't change who you are deep down inside.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary because getting into drag, your persona may change, but as a drag artist, you don't have a gun. Getting into a cop drag, and you heard it here first, cops are drag queens.
Yeah, they are.
But drag queens with guns and
Right.
very scary training. So the implications are like, I don't really know about this. From what I have noticed, there are some aspects that I like and that I find concerning. For one, there was this one female police officer that I had talked to for a really long time. I would see her every day on my shift. She was so nice, like nicer than regular people that I meet. So I started thinking like, oh, police officers can be nice. That's cool. But then she would also tell me about the bad sides of being a police officer. Because I wanted to be one, I needed to know all of her inside deets. So I'd ask her questions all the time. And she would start to tell me that being a female in the police force is kind of icky. Like, you have all of these men with all of this bravado, they put on their suits so they feel a little bit more like, and then they are like kind of hitting on you all the time. And there's so much camaraderie that I love, but it goes beyond the point of camaraderie of like, you will back your brothers in whatever they say, even if it's something up. So you literally have sexist things being said to you every day, misogynistic things, you're being hit on, and if you say anything, then you have this crowd of employees who are all like, oh, well, what are you gonna do about it, bro? It's just a joke. You know, that guy's funny. What are you gonna do about it? So, to me, it kind of felt like I am stuck in a prison of being a woman. It doesn't matter if I go into a profession where you are supposed to get a lot of respect from yourself, your coworkers, your community, but as a woman, you're still like half level. Like, you don't really get the full level of respect as everybody else, and that really grossed me out. But on the bright side, I've played softball for 11 years. It sucks, especially playing in Scottsdale. Like, the amount of competition is, like, not it. Like, playing sports for fun, they don't know what that means. But my favorite part about being on sports teams was the camaraderie, the teamwork, understanding each other. When somebody else is falling behind, you help them out, and vice versa, and the bonds that creates. I really saw that in the police force. Like, when I would go on the ride-alongs, the dudes joked with each other a lot. They would include me in the jokes, and it was fun. I could see the very strong friendships and the strong ties that were in it, but it also kind of, like, closes yourself off from the world. So it was good and bad. Can you tell me what your experience was like on the force? What is cop culture?
Ooh, I think you summed it up best. Cop culture is that macho bravado, masculine bond that almost seems inseparable in some situations. And I mean, I had my very first patrol partner when I first came out of the academy and got off of FTO that we still talk today. And that bond will probably never be broken. And I love him like a brother. I truly do. But being gay, I had a lot of female partners that I worked with that we could connect, because while they were going through the sexist comments, the misogynist comments, you know, I would see it and I was not the one to engage. If anything, I was like, hey, can we, you know, let's move on, because you're not going to like it if we start talking about you guys in a certain way, or what if I start hitting on you?
Yeah.
You know, I had a lot of really good looking partners. I mean, you know, it's like, how would you feel if I started doing this? Oh, whoa. Well, if you're not okay with me doing it or her doing it, then, you know, let's get over this. Let's have that respect for one another. And like you said, a lot of that, unfortunately, for females, or if you're not in the clique, because let's face it, there are cliques in the departments, even on your shifts, wherever you're at. If you're not a part of that, you're the outcast. So you very much have to do what you need to do to fit in. So you find your clique, you find your group, and that's a small part of an already small department that you're in. Even if you're in the largest department for your state or whatever, it's not that many officers. And then what happens is that ends up making you shut out friends from the outside world, because they don't get it. They don't understand the trauma that you go through. They don't understand the day-to-day grinds. You don't have someone that you can talk about that really crappy call that you were on earlier, except for your brothers and sisters who were probably there. So in turn, you end up finding out that all of your friends are law enforcement officers. And the ones that are not in law enforcement usually end up dropping you as a friend because they don't get you and you feel like you don't get them. And I think it very much goes full circle back to that whole us versus them. And I think that's where it comes down as a department, and especially as an individual, that you need to have those friends. And departments need to push, you need to have normal friends. Friends outside of uniform.
I really like that. I think that might be a good benefit for police forces, is to pay attention to what is happening to your officers outside of the job. Like, they do want you to focus on mental health, but maybe not a lot, maybe not enough. But if they were to encourage you to have extra friends, or, hey, you're going to have this one day off to pursue self-care, I think that would benefit not only the one officer, but it would make ripple effects into the community as a whole. And I think that would be really beautiful. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes right back to community policing that we were talking about. Back in the day, and I remember talking to my granddad, even my dad, about this, when they were beat cops. They would go out there, they would get to know their members. He knew Joe down at the deli, whether he was in uniform or out of uniform. So on his days off, he'd still go down there and get the same sandwich he would get while he was on uniform. And they built a relationship with each other that was not only professional, but personal.
I love that.
You know, and they got to know each other, and we have taken that so far out of community policing that that's not a thing anymore. And if we could just focus on getting officers involved in the community again and building that rapport with community members, business owners, even the homeless people, there's still people too.
Absolutely.
That we need to care about. Policing would change as a whole, and for the better.
Right. I love that! Yay! Can you tell us what your career experience has been like as a gay man?
Difficult. That whole locker room and shop talk, when you enter the locker room, whether you're getting ready for the day, end of the day, you had a really bad call and you need to change, the persona changes. The room changes when you enter. And let's face it, I wasn't the only gay officer on the force. And we would talk about this, that, you know, we'd come around and these guys would stop joking around a certain way, stop interacting with each other, and you come around and it's very difficult. It's very difficult to move up and get promoted. It's very difficult to move into specialty areas because you, and I hate to say it, you get that label as, oh, he's gay. Oh, she's lesbian, whatever. They're pan. They might be they. And you seriously get outcast. And it is the hardest thing to try and be who you are in uniform. And that's kind of where it comes back to being a police officer is drag, where you do have to put on a different persona. And I didn't know that at first. And it took me switching agencies before I kind of had to put who I was aside and realize that when I was in uniform, I was somebody different. Never forgetting who I truly was deep down inside, but not being as out and vocal about who I was to my partners.
Well, I'm really sorry that you had to experience that. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like you're doing this for a paycheck. You're suppressing who you are because you want to be accepted by people you're around every day, and you do need to work to live.
Right.
So to change who you are just for those conditions, I can only imagine had a negative effect on your self-esteem, how you interacted with anybody, whether they were in or out of the force. So I am really sorry that you had to endure that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I got you. So while you were on the force, can you tell us if you ever disagreed with any policies or procedures?
Oh no, they're all phenomenal.
Right?
They're
We're
all
done.
great.
We're
They're
done.
good. We're all good. This whole thing was just a wash.
Bye.
Let's go. No, of course. There's definitely a lot of policies and procedures out there that need to be revisited. The way agencies try to adjust to current situations, or things that are changing in the community, they're not there. They're really not. I remember at one time we had our use of force policy was very, very structured, and it was, you have to go in these steps before you get to deadly force. Unless bullets are coming at you, use your words, use less lethal, use a dog, use multiple officers, have that show of force, do what you can. And I remember at first, like, hey, this is great, because it really makes you step back and think, hey, wait a second, before I approach a situation with a gun, do I see that level of force? Do I need to come in with that level of force? And when I was on the department, that had changed, and they made it a sliding spectrum. And when I first reviewed this, I went, wait a second. We basically just said it's okay to come in with guns ablazing. It's okay to come in super, super strong when, let's face it, if you're there, people don't call cops over because they're having the best day of their life and they just want to hang out with their gal pal.
Yes.
That's not a thing. They're in their worst possible situation they might ever be facing their entire life. Their mental health isn't quite there. Their emotions are high. There's a lot of things running for these individuals. So when you show up and the department tells you it's okay to show up, guns out, ready to go in fighting, that takes the community aspect away. That, again, puts us back to these bad cops are coming in, and it's very much us versus them. Whereas you still had some of the officers kicking around like I would, that was like, that's not right. We don't need to come in guns blazing, badge heavy, 40 officers deep for a simple domestic dispute. And it was very troubling to see some of these policies get changed, honestly, for the worst, where it was like, no, we do need to have these steps. We do need to have this, because once they take that away, it allows the officer as an individual to have more of that freedom that they can come in and boom, right into tasing somebody, boom, right into hitting someone with a baton.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, wait a second, take a step back, killer.
Mm-hmm.
Talk, use your words, you know. And that's just one policy. I mean, we can go into hundreds of policies and procedures with an agency and break them all down of how they've either changed or how they just don't work. But yeah, that was probably my biggest one, is seeing a use of force policy change from you have to take these steps, and if you don't take these steps and jump right into it, you're going to have to answer to someone to, oh, it's okay. You can just come in and do whatever you want.
I can only imagine what that changes the officer's mentality to, as to how they see others, but also how much unnecessary force and violence the community faced as a result.
Absolutely. Those numbers were astronomical. The use of force, well, back then what we would have seen as a use of force review board was almost non-existent, because the department changed to allowing these types of behaviors. So the only time you saw a use of force board was in a shooting, or, you know, something really went wrong where it was like, hey, this guy really was unarmed. Did we really need to tackle 12 deep and, you know, step on his neck, and he's telling you he can't breathe and nobody does anything?
It's sad that what takes us to wake up is a murder.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
And, you know, honestly, I hate to say it, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. Because let's face it, that was a murder.
Yep.
That was a murder. And there's a lot of that happens in law enforcement, and it gets swept under the rug, and it's sad. Because again, it brings us back to us versus them, and that we're just making evil people, and we're creating this culture and this environment in an agency that's supposed to be there for the people, that's really not.
What do you think it would take to change policies and procedures for the better?
Oof. Lawmakers that are willing to listen. And that's probably asking the absolute world, especially with what we have going on here in our own home state. It would seriously need to take young, let's be honest, young, open-minded individuals from all diversity background and all walks of life, regardless of anything, religion, sex, orientation, whatever, to come together and review every single policy and change it. And I don't ever see an agency being like, hey, community, here's our books. Tell us what's wrong and how we can make this better, because we want to be the cops for you.
It would take a high level of maturity, because you would pretty much have to admit that you're wrong in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
And I just do not see that with our system, whether it's the force, our politics, our federal level government. I think, not Arizona, I think the United States needs a complete overhaul.
Oh, yeah.
And to see what other first world countries are doing and how much better their citizens are living. Like, the life expectancy is larger. The quality of life is better. If we want to tout that we are the freest country in the world, that we are the best country in the world, we need to actually act like it. And I think that starts with local level police. It starts with local level policies. It starts with local level politics. So unless it starts from the ground up, like you were saying, I don't really think it is going to change.
No.
And that is scary, because we are seeing murders and violence all of the time. Like, we are crying out for help, and unless we start admitting our wrongs, I don't know how else it's going to change. Can you tell us what you wish people knew about you and or the job?
Ooh, I would have to put myself back into when I was in uniform. I wish people knew that I was a person. I wish people knew that I was involved with my community more than what they would see the average police officer doing. I got out of my car, I walked around, I tried to build those rapports, but I also had a very good backing coming in as a third generation officer from two people that I looked up to, and let's face it, I don't know their whole career. I don't know what they've done. I don't know, but the good motivation that my dad and granddad always gave me was know your community, know your people, get out there. And I wish that I could have been myself. I wish that I could have been open and told more of my partners, like, hey, if you want a good laugh, you should come down and see this clown
Yes.
on a Friday or Saturday night.
Yes.
You know, have fun, let loose, enjoy. And I wish that I could share this aspect, my drag, with the community.
Mm-hmm.
But let's face it, not everybody loves drag, not everybody loves cops. So trying to put the two together would probably not be the best idea.
Yeah.
But to just show people that there is a human being underneath this uniform. There's a dad, there's a lover, there is just your average person that's in average clothes doing average day-to-day stuff. I'm no different.
I love that. Can you tell us about some of the barriers that you have faced?
Ooh, the predominant one just being trying to be an openly gay man on the force, and that in and of itself was a barrier. Mm-hmm. And I realized very early on with the first agency I was with that you have to keep that set aside. Mm-hmm. Some other barriers that I ran into was just, let's call it how it is. A lot of these officers are right-winged. They're very badge heavy, and they have a different mindset. So when you come in not falling into that same category, you are definitely put out as the different one. Mm-hmm. You know, the way he responds to calls, you know, did you see what he did over here? He took so many hours to de-escalate this situation. Yeah, that's kind of the whole, like, protection, literally on the side of the car. Mm-hmm. It's what we're supposed to be doing. And that puts up so many negative red flags for you as an individual when you think, no, it should be the opposite. If anything, they should be seeking you out. Hey, how did you do that? Mm-hmm. How did you get to a peaceful resolution? How were you able to come about? You should be supported and uplifted, when in fact it's just the opposite.
Yeah, that's kind of scary because here we come again to this us versus them. Mm-hmm. Not only is it cops versus non-cops, but it is then internal. It's us cops versus those cops.
Right.
So you have interdepartment conflict. You have out of career conflict. I just don't see how you can protect a community when you're trying to remove yourself from all of these different communities. Like, when you're on the force and you go out for your day, you get into the car first thing of the day, you don't know who you're going to come in contact to. I can only imagine all of the different walks of life that you encountered on a day-to-day basis. So if you're excluding yourself from others and also serving all of these type of others, you're kind of going into it with biases. And these biases are affecting people's lives, whether they get a ticket unnecessarily, whether they get treated with discrimination, whether they get put into jail for just being who they are, like with some of the anti-trans bills that are trying to get passed here in Arizona. It's just kind of self-defeating for wanting to serve the community, but also not wanting any part to do with it. I don't see how those can work.
Right, and they don't.
Can you tell us what adversity you have faced on the force specifically for being a drag queen?
Oof. I have had partners that I worked with that I thought I had a really good, not rapport, a really good relationship with, approach me in a very aggressive manner and just point blank ask, you know, hey, do you do drag? Like, is this real? Is what I heard real? And of course I'd be like, yeah, of course. You know, like, what? It's outside of work, off the clock, out of uniform. For one, what business is it of yours? Unless you want to hand me your ones and go have some fun.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a private thing. Mm-hmm. The things that they would say and the way that they would just storm off and I would never see them again was detrimental. You know, you would think, here's this band of brotherhood that we're supposed to have. love and support each other no matter what, and they find out that you're a drag performer and that's it. You're dead to them. And it had caused a lot of pain throughout the years. But I'd have some partners that would find out that instantly wanted to know where I was, where can they see me, you know. They wanted to see me in drag, and they loved it.
Yay!
Absolutely loved it and supported. But honestly, those were few and far between.
Oh, I can also see that, for example, when I went on my ride along, the officer that I was with, super nice guy, but he was stressed in the job. Not only does the amount of stress actually lower the life expectancy for police officers, but he literally had 19 cases that he was working on at a time, which is against policy, and he would tell me that he would try to take his paperwork and work on it at home, which is also against policy, but if you were not able to finish that paperwork, then you would also get in trouble. So you're if you do, you're if you don't.
Not agencies allowing their own to break their own policies and then enforcing.
No! Not in my America.
Not in this, oh sis, not in this America, no.
Yeah. So if
happens all the time.
Yeah. And if you have all of these officers that are continually bombarded by paperwork, then when they do something that they might deem as petty, as being rude to each other, being discriminatory against each other, then I can see where they would not want to do the paperwork in that. If you're already dealing with 19 reports, then nobody else is going to want to file an HR report, get into disciplinary action, have to deal with the negative consequences of now people kind of don't like each other in the force. So all of this really goes hand in hand. It is us versus them. People are overloaded on the force. There is literally so many negative aspects into being a police officer that we could not cover every single one. But I think the things that you have brought here today are super important for people to know, whether you're in the queer community, whether you're in the police community. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we are all human beings, and it does not matter what uniform you are wearing, if you are wearing a wig, if you are wearing your badge, it does not matter. We are people, and the more that we try to separate and just get closer into our own small connections has negative effects on everyone. So I am just super thankful to have you here today.
Of course.
I think that your messages are important and your life experience is important because you're not the only one. Imagine how many other people in the world are police officers who either are queer or are drag artists, and how many police officers could learn something from that, or how many community members can learn something from that. So I think that you're very important. Thank you so much. I have a little present for you.
Oh, yay!
I forgot. So I think we'll end that. Gotta take a deep breath. Alright.
Okay, we got this. Oh, I'm gay as it gets.
Gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
No, yeah, no.
Yay! Love a gay queen. Who doesn't?
Who doesn't love a gay queen?
Cops are cosplay. You got the uniform, like you said, you got all the accessories, you got your cute little car, you got your friends that are all dressing the same too.
That's true.
How different is it even from being a furry? Cops are furries.
You go to your morning meetings, your conventions, right? You have your midday briefs, you've got your debriefs afterward. Oh, yeah.
Yes, even the mentality that we're better than others because we dress up like this. How is it any different? You explain to me. What was it though? It's gone, it's gone. I keep losing my thought. Like, a duck. Dude. It's really bad.
Oh, don't tell me.
Okay, okay. So, I can